All right, let's get started. And again, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Vlad Kavalevsky. I'm from Global Disaster Preparedness Center, and we're really excited to have you with us today. And this is our third webinar in this series about reaching the last mile, evidence and practice for inclusive early warning systems, where we highlight research that was supported by GDPC across across 14 countries on kind of early warning, early action for last mile communities. And before we dive in, just a few reminders that this webinar is being recorded, and we're gonna send out a recording and some summary of key takeaways and findings from this session to you after the webinar. So yeah, stay tuned for our follow-up email, and then we're gonna take questions. We have four presenters today, and we're gonna take your questions after all the presentations. But if a question pops up in your mind as you listen to our presenters, feel free to utilize the Q&A feature to post your question there, and then we'll just go back to it and respond to your questions. So yeah, save your questions for later, but if there is something that you want to ask right away, just post it in the Q&A section of this webinar. Yeah, as I said, the whole premise of this series is to help kind of share their findings from the 15 studies that we supported across the world, looking at what makes early warning systems more inclusive and more accessible for various last mile communities. And by last mile communities, we mean groups that are kind of historically and traditionally marginalized, hardest to reach, or kind of the last to benefit from various services and formal systems. And as I said, it's a series of webinars. We already had two. This is our third one. And today we're going to look at the topic of indigenous, place-based, and local knowledge, and how communities utilize it to kind of fill the gaps in the formal early warning systems. And we're going to have our last webinar in 2 weeks from now on July 21st. And if you have not signed up, feel free to use this QR code, or I'm going to share a link in the chat to sign up for the last webinar. And also, just people who already attended this webinar keep hearing about our meta-synthesis report at every webinar, but I just, for those who attending for the first time, I just kind of wanted to share that we also developed a meta-synthesis report that looks across at the findings and recommendations across all the 15 studies, kind of helps identify common barriers and enablers for more effective and inclusive early warning systems, and kind of again creates this like very robust evidence-based across different contexts on kind of what's working, what's not working in terms of early warning systems, and again how policymakers and systems developers can make them more inclusive, kind of what components of warning systems are underfunded currently, and what kind of needs more attention to make the systems more effective. So yeah, if you have not seen it, feel free to check out the report. And again, I'm gonna share a link in the chat in a little bit. This is just a little bit more about the report, and yeah, kind of the bottom line of our report, and also pretty much all the studies that we supported, is that last mile, like early warning systems challenges are not purely technical, even where there is formal coverage, even when there is kind of robust forecasting and monitoring infrastructure. early warnings often fail, and those challenges are kind of ultimately social and institutional. And now effectiveness of early warnings is determined not only by technology but also by social structure and collaboration and kind of networks that are involved in warnings dissemination and making sure that they reach kind of all community members. And today, as I said, we're gonna look at the topic of indigenous and local knowledge, and more specifically about we know that communities for centuries have been using and monitoring the environments to predict risks and some warning signs. And in the context where formal systems are often, delayed or absent, how do communities leverage or rely on their place-based, occupational, and indigenous knowledge to strengthen those early warning systems, and kind of what formal EV early warning systems developers can do to kind of take advantage and leverage those indigenous signs to improve the effectiveness of early warnings. And we'll be hearing from four amazing researchers from various countries. Today, we'll hear from Romir Youngling from University of Melbourne, who did his research in the Philippines and looked at two different last mile communities in mountain and coastal areas. Then we'll hear from Max Martin from University of Sussex, who did his research in India, focusing on traditional fishers and kind of, again, how they utilize forecast information and how they utilize their kind of own knowledge of the sea to determine their actions. Then we'll hear from Tirsid Salidengel from Addis Ababa University, who studied agro-pastoralist communities in Ethiopia, and more specifically the indigenous knowledge that they use for early warning, early action. And then we'll hear from Shampa from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, who studied kind of community-led early actions for flash flood if in northeastern Bangladesh. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our researchers. But just a quick reminder that the next session will be on July 21st. And if you have not signed up yet, feel free to sign up. It's going to be our last session where we'll talk more about kind of this research and more kind of specific hands-on implications of this funding for design, kind of partnerships and practice of early warning systems. And now I would like to hand it over to Ramir for his presentation.
Yep. Thank you so much, Vlad. Let me share my presentation. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Global Disaster Preparedness Center for the invitation. Today, I'd like to share some insights regarding the use of early warning system based on my fieldwork in two last mile communities in the northern Philippines. The core of this presentation essentially revolved around this question. What can we learn from last mile communities about early warning? And what can practitioners learn from that in order to design more inclusive and effective early warning systems? In order to answer that question, I'd like to begin with a quote from one of my key informants during my fieldwork in a coastal village in Pangasinan, Philippines. And I quote, "Old folks have peculiar ways to tell whether a storm is coming. The wind, when restless, accompanied by a howling sea that is louder than usual, you can also feel the breeze gives you a different feeling. We know it's time to secure our boats and homes." This particular quote gives me the impression that long before an SMS alert, a Facebook post, or even a weather bulletin arrives about an impending disaster, communities are already observing, interpreting, and responding to their environment. The Philippines has long
Romir,
been one of, sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry for interrupting you. Can you put your presentation in the full screen mode, please? Because we can still see like the
Oh,
PowerPoint.
really?
Yeah, sorry about that.
I think I'm already in the full screen mode.
I don't know, maybe you're sharing the wrong, if you have multiple screens, maybe if you're sharing the wrong one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you now see at your end the presentation?
No, we don't see it.
All right.
We try to
Sorry
share
about
it
that.
again. No
Let me
worries.
share. Let me share it again. What about this time? Can you see the slides?
Yes, but it's still not in the full screen mode.
Okay. What about now?
I think
What
it's
about now,
still the
Vlad?
same. It's
Still
still
the
the
same.
same.
Oh,
Yeah. How
really?
about I share your presentation and you just tell me to move to the next slide when you
Yeah,
need
sure
to.
thing. Yeah, yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, just give me a second. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so I would like to begin with a quote from one of my key informants during my fieldwork in a coastal village in the Philippines. And I quote, "All folks have peculiar ways to tell whether a storm is coming. The wind when restless, accompanied by a howling sea that is louder than usual. You can also feel the breeze gives you a different feeling, and we know it's time to secure our boats and homes." And this particular quote gives me the impression that long before an SMS alert, a Facebook post, or a weather bulletin arrives, communities are already observing, interpreting, and responding to their environment. The next slide, please. The Philippines has long been one of the world's most disaster-prone countries, and over countless years of living with typhoons and other hazards, last-mile communities have accumulated local knowledge and lived experiences that have become an integral part of their repertoire of early warning practices. And this led me to ask a broader question. So, how do communities actually make sense of risk? Next slide, please. One of the most important insights that I have learned from my fieldwork is that last mile communities very rarely depend on a single source of information when preparing for hazards. Instead, they actively weave together different forms of knowledge before deciding how to respond. For instance, they draw on trusted social networks, family members, friends, neighbors, community leaders, and fellow fishers or farmers to exchange and validate information. At the same time, they rely on local ecological knowledge. During the interview, some participants describe observing behavioral changes, for example, in insects, small animals, birds, sea conditions, waves, rainfall, and other environmental cues that through years of experience they have learned to associate with approaching typhoon or storms. For example, next slide, please. One farmer from the Indigenous Kankanaoy tribe in Mapitagular, Pangasinan has this to say: "We observe the behavior of insects and small animals. If the house lizards continues to produce unusual sounds, which is done in repeated, recurring patterns throughout the day, we know a strong typhoon is coming." Similarly, a farmer shared that the behavior of ants has long been regarded as an indicator of an approaching storm. And I quote, "Our forefathers taught us to read the signs in nature. When the ants start to surface from the ground as though looking for shelter as a group, that means they are preparing as a storm is not far away." And in the coastal community of Cabalitian in Sual, Pangasinan, fishers describe observing the sea and the birds in the sky itself. We get cues from the sea and the sky when the birds fly in groups as though restless, and when the waves get unusually bigger than their typical rhythm, there is a sign of bagyo or typhoon. So all these narratives remind us that communities have accumulated generations of place-based and local indigenous knowledge that help them interpret environmental changes and anticipate hazards. Can we go back to the last slide, please? Yep. And thirdly, communities also draw on the memories of previous disasters. So communities learn from experience, and those lessons shape how they interpret this and respond to future disasters. Can we go to the next slide? And yeah, that precisely. Let me illustrate this point. For example, with the two of the most powerful typhoons to hit the Philippines. In 2013, Super Typhoon Haiyan claimed around 7,000 to 10,000 lives, depending on the source. And 5 years later, in 2018, an equally strong typhoon, known as the Super Typhoon Mangkot, resulted only in 127 fatalities. Certainly, many factors contributed to this remarkable difference in terms of the, the number of lives lost, including improved forecasting, earlier evacuations, stronger institutional coordination, and better governance practices. However, based on my interviews during my fieldwork, it suggests that there was another important change and that communities themselves had learned from past disasters. During interviews, people repeatedly referred to their experiences of Haiyan when explaining why they prepared differently for Mangkot, as shown by the following narrative. And I quote, "We've been through typhoons before, such as Yolanda," referring to Super Typhoon Haiyan. "So we know how important it is to prepare. Before Mangkut, we made sure to look on our crops first. If we know that they are going to be destroyed by flood waters, we'll harvest them immediately. We also buy food in advance, reinforce our roof, and trim any branches that could destroy our house roofings." And finally, these memories of past disasters and this locally grounded knowledge is complemented by formal early warning systems. During typhoons, technology may fail because of power outages or poor internet connectivity. So people still rely on traditional broadcast media such as the radio, television, and of course the official early warning from Pagasa, or the lead agency of the Philippines regarding uh, the weather, and the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council. The point here is rather than choosing one source over another, they integrate official information with local observations, their lived experiences, and of course their trusted social networks before deciding how to act or how to respond. The next slide, please. So what actually turns an early warning into an action? Receiving an early warning is merely a part of the equation. A warning becomes actionable when several or some of the following conditions come together. First, people need to believe that the risk is real. If the threat is not perceived as credible or serious, they are far less likely to act. Secondly, people need to trust the messenger. Trust is not something that is built overnight. It is built through consistent engagement and credible communication. Thirdly, family members, neighbors, and local leaders, so-called social capital, they play a crucial role in shaping decisions. So people rarely make preparedness decisions or protective decisions in isolation. They often discuss, verify, and act collectively. And finally, people must feel capable of taking action. Even the best warning will have limited impact if people lack the confidence, the resources, or the ability to respond. In other words, an effective early warning system is not only about communicating risk, it is also about enabling action. Taken together, I believe these actionable insights point to 5 practical lessons when designing and implementing early warning system. And that brings me to my next slide. First, we need to integrate better integrate local, indigenous, and place-based knowledge into our early warning system. So rather than separate from scientific forecasting, we should recognize it as a complementary knowledge that can strengthen local preparedness. Second, we should co-design early warning systems with communities. Communities are not mere passive recipients of early warning. They should also help shape how those warnings are communicated, understood, and acted upon. Third, we need to invest in trust long before disasters occur. As we've seen, people are far more likely to act on warnings when it comes from sources they know and trust. Fourth, warnings must be specific and actionable. They need practical guidance on what to do, when to act, and where to go. And finally, we need to strengthen community networks, families, neighbors, community volunteers. They should form part of the social networks on how early warnings should be shared, verified, and translated into early action. And that brings me to my final reflection. To the final slide, please. Throughout this presentation, I tried to show that communities are far more than final recipients of early warnings. They're actually active interpreters of risk, equipped with local knowledge and agency. The challenge, therefore, is not simply to deliver early warnings. It is to design early warning systems that recognize, respect, and build upon the knowledge that communities already have. Because ultimately, the effectiveness of early warning system lies not only in better technology, but also in stronger partnerships with the communities they are meant to serve. So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to our discussion. Back to you, Vlad.
Yeah, thank you so much, Romir. And yeah, if you have any questions to Romir, please remember them or put them in the Q&A section, and then we'll get back to them after all the presenters. And now I would like to hand it over to Tirsit from Addis Ababa University, who will share more about your research on agro-pastoralist communities in Ethiopia. Tirsit, are you here? All right, since the Tirsit maybe stepped out, I don't know, Shampa, if you're ready, maybe you can go next.
Okay, then please share my slides.
Yes, I can share your slides. You can start by introducing yourself while I'm pulling out your slides.
Okay, thank you, Vlad. I am Shampa. I work with early warning system in the for the Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh, we know we are very known because of many types of disaster we need to face, and we have like different type of floods, like river floods, flash flood, and fluvial floods. So this time, for within the funding of the GDPC, I work with the flash flood, and so I will share my experience with you about my flash flood, what we investigate during after the flood of 2022. Vlad, next click, please. In case of the river flood or the other type of flood, you know well that there are times so we can reach to many people and people have the time to take the actions. But in case of the flash flood, it's very quick and we have very little time to take the action. Vlad, click please. And what we basically don't know in case of our country and as well as the global incidents, that what basically triggers the early warning to the early actions. And we think that that is the main gap to manage the risks of the flash flood. And in this research, we basically tries to find this answer. Next click, please. So next slide. And as a test case, we took one area that is called Tahirpur Upazila, and it is very near to the Cherrapunji, which is the wettest area of the world. So this area, our study area, needs to drain lots of water from this wettest area, and it lies within the border of the Indian and Bangladesh. And in typical monsoon season, this area got flooding. So the people know how to deal with the floods. They have a very strong indigenous knowledge. But what happened in 2022, that was an extreme event, and within one day, the Cherrapunji received more than 900 millimeter of the rainfall. Next click, please. And I am showing you an example that this is a submersible embankment, and this is the electricity distribution line. And the community said that during the flood of 2022, the water level just touched that electricity line. So you can imagine how big was that flood. And within this setting, we basically set up our research objectives. Next slide, please. So we tries to examine how the people receive the early warning message along with the flood dynamics, and how they can contextualize that early warning message with themselves, and how they took the early actions, and is that action is enough for them to reduce the damages. That was our main research question in this study. Next slide, please. I am not going to tell the detail of the methodology, just we did some household survey, KIIs and FGDs, and also like we analyze the time series rainfall and the flood level data. Next slide, please. Our result part is basically divided into the 4 sections. So I am going to talk about the forecast, early warning, contextualization, early actions, and their effectiveness in damage reduction. Next slide, please. Next slide. So let's talk about why the forecast was not effective for them. In the left side of this figure, you can see that there are 2 line graph. One is for the Cherrapunji, and one is for the Bangladesh. And we inside the Bangladesh, the rainfall is much lower than the rainfall in the Cherrapunji. So the predictive model inside in Bangladesh, they cannot predict how much water is coming from the Indian side. Next click, please. And at the same time, if you see the within the Bangladesh prediction, you can see in the right figure that it is still far lower than the actual rainfall. Next click, please. In Bangladesh, we found that nearly 188 millimeter of the rainfall was well estimated within the Bangladesh. Next slide, please. And if we see the flood warning system, that is like we can see that in case of the flash flood, the Bangladesh flood warning system give the warning 5 days ahead, and you can see that the 5 days warning was very wrong, but near 1 day it was nearly accurate. But what you can see that in the warning message, the water recedes within 1 day. But when we are analyzing the flood situation there, even after 1 month, we saw that the area was inundated. So one of the reasons is that the warning, the flood measuring gauge was situated in the upstream region, which cannot capture the whole picture of that local topography. And at the same time, there was already this area was filled with the water that is from the previous rainfall. Say, for example, the May and June rainfall, and the precipitation from the June 17 that makes the extreme event, that was basically piled up, and it intruded to the homestead of the people living in that area. It was very devastating. Next click, please. So that was not basically forecasted by our forecaster. That was the main forecasting gap to the people. Next slide, please. And then we examine basically who received the warning. And we saw that there are three types of houses in that area. That is called linear settlement, clustered settlement, where the people live in very clustered house with a common yard, and dispersed settlement, that is very distant from the other settlement type. And we found that only 25% of the people received the official warning message. And among them, the dispersed people were the last mile, who are basically the vulnerable people, that pregnant women or elderly people. They received the early warning message on only 23 of them, 23rd of them received the early warning message. But we asked, or we also asked them, do you know what is the meaning of that early warning message, or can you interpret them? And they said yes, they can interpret. Only 30% of them said they can interpret that message. Next click, please. So next click, please. And in our study area, what we find that there are three types of warning. That is, one is meteorological warning, that all say how much rainfall is coming. Another is flood warning, that how much flood water is coming. And another is agricultural warning. And what we find that the meteorological warning was the most common that people can get, but flood warning is the least one that the people can receive. And if we concentrate with the last mile communities, person to person communication is still the major channel to receive those type of the warning. Next click, please. We also asked to the people when you receive that warning, and most of them received the warning within 2 to 4 days, and the last mile says they received the warning nearly 2 days ahead of the event. And that in the previous slide I already showed that at that time the warning was not so much accurate, so the official warning basically cannot help them to take the early actions. Next slide, please. So we asked the people then how you took the early actions. So more or less 60% of them reported us they took the early actions based on their indigenous knowledge. So what we asked to the different type of people who is living in the cluster, linear, or the dispersed settlement, what was your main indicator of the predicting the flood? So the clustered and linear settlement people said the river water level was their main indicator, but the dispersed people who lives like distant places from the river, they said the cloud pattern was their main indicator. And they took the early actions basically based on this indicator. Next slide, please. And we asked the people what basically you do after receiving the official early warning message, or after guessing the flood from your indigenous indicator. They said they took two types of action. One is community based and one is household level actions. And community based, like there are several types of action, like reserve the crops or repair the embankment. And the household level, evacuation are the topmost actions. And it doesn't vary regarding the settlement. I can show you some actions, but please next click. Yeah, like they could evacuate during the flood this type of houses, or they can like strengthening their plinth level, or making lofts or macha or portable slopes. That was their main early action. But nearly 7.5 people said that they didn't take any early actions. And we investigate those people. They said they already took some adaptive actions at the beginning of the year, so that they think that was enough for saving them. So they didn't take any early action during that flood time. Next slide, please. And finally, we asked them whether this early action saved them to reduce the damage or not. And in case of the house damage, what we got, that early action basically saves them to save their house damages. But in case of the crop damage, reserve crop damage, we found that it is mixed experience. Like some people who take early action, even their damages is higher than who didn't take any early action. It may be due to their long-term adaptive actions. And we also calculate the damage due to the livestock. And this result shows that, Vlad, next click, please. It was like less associated with the early actions. So there are many types. There are types of results where we can see that there are severe damage instead of taking the early action in case of the livestock. Next slide, please. So for the inclusive early warning system, we think that this indigenous indicator should be integrated, and the early warning message should include the evacuation routes, shelter informations, and the guidance for the vulnerable people. And one of the most important things that we recommend to form one volunteer group who can go to the last mile, and they can communicate. And people need resources for taking that early action. That is one of the most important thing. And we need like some other actions to save the livestock. That was our recommendation for the inclusive early warning system. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and we can, like, our team can conclude that only if though only 25% people took the received the early warning message, but more than 60% of the people take the early action. So we need to invest in them. So as the community take the action, so we need to strengthening them. And also, if we can translate that our warning to the micro level early action, that can that can be the critical bridge between the focus and the resilience. Thank you. Next
Thank
slide.
you, Shampa. Thank you, Shampa. That's a really interesting presentation, and it's interesting to see how communities not only use kind of traditional science to predict hazards, but also they kind of rely on more like traditional approaches and traditional practices to as early actions to respond to those hazards. And thank you so much. Again, if you have any questions to Shampa, feel free to drop them in the Q&A part of the webinar. And now I would like to hand it over to Tirsit Saledengel from Addis Ababa University for her to walk us through her study that focused on kind of indigenous knowledge for early warning, early action in South Omo communities in Ethiopia. Tirsit, over to you. I think Tirsit is having some technical issues, so maybe in the meantime I can invite Max Martin to for his presentation.
Thanks, Vlad. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well and see you well.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Vlad, and thanks, American Red Cross and the Center for giving me this wonderful opportunity for research and dissemination. Many thanks. Okay, let me start my presentation about what they know in southwestern India, where I worked, based on fellowship from the American Red Cross and help and guidance from Vlad and colleagues. So what they know, early warning, early action with traditional fishes of southwestern India. Next, please. So southwestern India is a part of the North Indian Ocean, which is increasingly becoming storm prone, particularly prone to intense storms. So which is a rather new phenomenon. When I was in school, we were taught that this part of the Indian Ocean, which is the western coast of India, is not comparatively calmer, but the eastern side is stormier. So we have storms every year on the eastern side. But when I had just about finished my PhD, I was midway through my PhD, that is 2014, the post-monsoon season here became marked by very intense cyclones, which is every other year we would see a very intense cyclone, which is more than 100 kilometers per hour wind. So this is becoming storm prone and people's livelihoods are becoming riskier. So it's a very dramatic change that we saw over the past 12 years or so. The post-monsoon period was relatively calmer here. So this is a group that is going to hit the ocean just before heavy rain starts. So that's a very increasingly common phenomenon when people launch their boats, even in the midst of high wind of the monsoon and high waves, which are very dangerous, because that's also the time when the sea is cooler and there are shoreward wind that blows from the deep ocean towards the shore, bringing a lot of fish shoals closer to the shore, close to the surface. So that's a time of a lot of fish, but it's also the most dangerous time of the year, 4 months from May to September. So that became our research time. So this is the southwestern India, the map. As you see, the part of India, the gray part is Kerala on the southwestern coast, and the work area was a 80-kilometer long stretch of a district called Thiruvananthapuram. So that is southern part of Kerala state. So we studied the villages there, 6 villages which are dominated by traditional fishers who use rafts, boats, and traditionally tied traditional boats and fiberglass boats with outboard motors. So that's a kind of a study area. And the people we studied are people who fish very close to the shore on the shore with shore seine units, which are like bag-like nets that they cast across about a kilometer or even more with the help of boats, and then they pull it from the shore with bare hands. So you get a lot of fish from all this 1 kilometer area. So that's a traditional fishing close to the shore. Then raft fishers who go to 1, 2, 3, or 4 kilometers. Then we have traditional rope-tied boats that go even further to 10, 20 kilometers, and fiberglass boats with outboard motors that go far away, sometimes up to 100 kilometers. And the next, please. So it's a home to 50,000 artisanal fishers, and it's a coastline comprises sandy beaches, estuaries, rocky areas, and granite seawalls increasingly because of wave attacks. This wave happened in 2018, actually. It's an old picture. This is shore waves caused by remote storms that happened in the South Indian Ocean, which is 5,000 miles away, about 9,000 kilometers away, and they traveled across the ocean in 5 days and destroyed houses there. This pink part used to be the house of one of our research participants, a fisherman. So this kind of incidents are becoming more and more frequent now, remote storm impacts, apart from the impacts of the local storms. Next, please. Can I have the next, please? Hello. So yes, the waves are becoming higher. So we have evidence now to show that the storm-induced waves from these are called swells. Swells are waves generated by very distant storms, which travel miles and miles. As I said, the last one was 5,000 miles. So reached uh, reach the shore, and they kind of they pack in the energy still, even if they don't look like very high waves in the high ocean, but when they kind of hit against the shallow coast, they become giant waves and they cause a lot of damage. So during the monsoon, this kind of high waves are very frequent, and the raft fishers often jump off their craft so that they don't hit against their raft or the seabed. So that can be very dangerous. So one person who we talked with was narrating that of the experience of another fisherman who got injured in a wave hit, and he had an injury on his body which took something like 20 stitches to heal. So that can be very dangerous. So people brave it, they avoid them. And next, please. So this is a set of waves that happened during our study period in 2024, which again came from southern Atlantic, which is not traditionally stormy place, but 2024 was a stormy time, and it became throughout the stormy season, we had high waves in parts of Thiruvananthapuram, and this is one of the high waves that kind of destroyed houses, seawalls, and coastal structures. Next, please. So so the point is that the remote storms that are gaining ground are becoming increasingly frequent, and they are becoming more and more destructive. So that's one of the things that the forecasts often do not take into account adequately. The major events are forecast, but sometimes they become weekly, bi-weekly events that happen again and again. So not only that fishing becomes difficult, but people lose houses and they get displaced from their fishing villages. That creates a lot of problems for traditional fishing livelihoods. Next, please. So people have died in between 2016 and 2021. 345 fishers have died while fishing off the coast of Kerala. That is and this figure does not include those who died in the sea when a very severe cyclonic storm happened in 2017. That's another 245 people, 365 people from this region and 145 from this Thiruvananthapuram district. Next, please. So why is in such a scenario, my research explored how traditional early warning worked along with traditional with scientific early warning, and how they generally helped early warning, early action. Next, please. So this is the kind of this picture shows like how different types of fishes go to different distances from the shore. What they're facing is monsoon winds, swells, and cyclones that are becoming high wave events, and swells and storms. So that there involves a livelihood trade-off. It's just because of storms. Often forecasters tell them not to go and fish, as it happened during my research period over the years. Sometimes up to 50% of the fishing days of monsoon is 122 days. In 1 year, they issued forecast as much as 60 times. So that means almost half the days were off bounds for fishers. So that's not viable. So last mile interpretation. So warning becomes useful only when fishers know when actually real danger is when. So often there is forecast for a large area, like 200-kilometer area, they give one forecast. They say that stormy seas, don't go. So probably that's not applicable for all parts of this 200-kilometer stretch, maybe only for 50 or 100 kilometers. The other 100 kilometers is generally safe. So our research looked at how localized forecast can help. Next, please. So how do they make this decision? So the fishers are avid, very interesting consumers of of forecast. They use all kinds of forecasts, which is many of them follow apps like Windy. Some of them look at the American NOAA website. Some of them look at private specialized surfers websites, apps. So it's like a mix and match of forecast sources they use, along with the national forecasters forecast that they get from radio and the television. Sometimes when it's a stormy time, over loudspeakers by the local self-government authorities and the coastal police. But they also rely on three types of traditional knowledge. One is what their grandfathers and fathers, who are also fishermen, traditional fishermen, have taught them right from their childhood. Like, for instance, if it's a pencil sharp line below a cloud, that means strong wind passing by, and if you can feel the wind, that means you are going to get hit by heavy rain. Similarly, if color change in the sea is advancing towards you, that means a high wind is coming your way. So then they look at the arrival of some sort of flies and dragonflies and beetles, bees on the shore or in the high seas. That means there is wind coming from southeastern side, which can be very high wind, can be dangerous, because the south of the southern part of Thiruvananthapuram is open ocean, right up to almost till Australia or even further down. It's open ocean. The wind can be very, very strong. So when this kind of thing happens, they say it's dangerous wind, go shoreward or take cover. So this it's a set of knowledge that they pass on from generation to generation. So that helps them make sea stage judgment, which they combine with their own observation of cloud color, shape, movement, and the color of the sea, and so on. So it's a mix of traditional knowledge from forefathers and their own knowledge, which they pass on through mobile phones on the shore or in the sea with walkie-talkies. That's like short distance radio that covers about 10 nautical miles or 15 nautical miles they relay. So sometimes there have been instances of people relaying it up to 50 nautical miles or even more through different sets of radio sets about impending wind from one side. So that's a very interesting way of their own system that works about sharing this knowledge across generations. And young people from the shore, if they can connect over radio or over mobile phones, they can look at the forecast also. So it's a kind of a big black box that allows this kind of decision making using inputs from various sources, traditional and scientific. Next, please. So what do they do? So the decision making is about avoid going to the shore, just don't go, or the decision making is adjust on the basis of this knowledge, this combined set of knowledge. They adjust. They probably, instead of 6 people on the boat, they will just go 2 or 3 people, so that the boat is lighter and they can come back faster. They use stronger machines, like high power engines they carry, so that they can cut across high waves. Or while in the sea, if they see that, they make a quick decision to come back. Sometimes they even cut off their nets with fish, so that they can return very fast at a great loss of money, and protect. During swell forecast, boats and gear are moved away from the coast and they protect. So this is how early action happens. That's also has a very strong community element and community knowledge element, which kind of helps them make these decisions while on the shore, while in the sea, or while coming back. Next, please. So what my research shows is that it's not just formal forecasts that help, but also their local verification based on experience, based on peer knowledge, peer exchanges, from traditional knowledge passed on through generations, and comparison of different forecast sources. And there is a kind of a peer consensus before going from nearby boats and other crews, and while in the sea, within the crew. There are senior members who are experienced, but they also consult junior members. So it's a collective action, which kind of takes me to the next level of research, which looks at the system approach that operates in early warning, early action. So early action can be go, no go, route changes, return, move, boats or gear, and it is mediated always by consensus and consultations with peers, elders, younger fishermen who have access to technology, elderly fishermen who knows the tradition much better. So it's a combined system that works towards early action. Next, please. So what's the solution then? So the solution, as we propose, is like co-produce forecast with fishermen, use their knowledge as much as possible, as always, and the feedback, take that into account, feed it back to the forecaster so that the forecast can be better, more relevant, and more action-oriented. And translate into decisions. It's not just 40 knots wind that matters, but also how does it affect your small craft, 15 feet, or a boat that is 30 feet, or it's a bigger vessel, if it's 50 feet, bigger vessel. So that differential impacts of different weather events need to be translated, and use trusted channels. So fishers have their own community systems, their own exchange mechanisms. We are supporting a community streamlining system. There are localized loudspeakers. So these systems are trusted. People go and ask them. So what is going on? Of course, mass media too, but that catered to a large area. Usually what people trust is localized systems that has some of their members as experts and newsmen and weathermen or weather women, as we were supporting this Radio Monsoon. It's run by a woman. So, and enable action, what they can do. So that needs to be the kind of a touchstone of all kinds of forecast and the system of early warning and early action, whether that leads to action. So that's my bit of wisdom. Thanks again, Vlad and colleagues and American Red Cross for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been talking for the past 30 seconds without realizing I was on mute. Yeah, thanks, Max. Very interesting insights when it comes to like decision-making process and how, it's not just a formal system, formal forecast and alerts that influence decision, but also like environmental cues and also occupational knowledge and this like experience of older and more experienced fishermen. So yeah, really, really interesting study.